Dobar dan. I would first like to thank the team that organized this conference, and in particular Božidar Radičić. I have a gift for him, and he's not here. I've been trying for 3 days to present this gift, and I attempted last night, but I left it at the back and I was up on stage. But as a number of you know, that I've been working with a very special group in Canada. It's the Mohawk Nation, which lies in Ontario. They're a sovereign nation of Indigenous people, and they're just wonderful to work with. They have a beautiful lab. They're out in the country, and they have a very natural approach to medical cannabis. They've been using it for thousands of years. And I have a traditional gift from the Mohawk for Božidar. It's an eagle feather. This has a lot of honor and spiritual meaning. And I have a tradition of taking a stone and leaving a stone, and I brought him a piece of blue apatite rock, which is another spiritual stone from the Mohawk. And I've known Božidar for a number of years, and I see him as a real true crusader for the cause. And I greatly appreciate his work and his team's work in getting myself here and the other speakers. The title of my talk, I had originally sent it to Božidar and the team, saying I was going to present on putting cannabis to work. And it got changed in translation to exploiting cannabis, and that sounds like we're exploiting it for money, and I'm just not a businessman. I'm a scientist. You'll see my wife on my arm. You can ask her how much of a businessman I am. I'm just no good at business. Anyway, I will give a fairly short presentation today. And I want to talk about the endocannabinoid system. Going back to what I just said in putting cannabis to work, I have started a project in Ontario, Canada, to try to reduce the number of opiate deaths using cannabis as a harm reduction agent. And I see it as the most powerful harm reduction agent that we have to use on the planet. And I'm sorry that I can't present more data on this right now, because I've run into a lot of barriers in starting the project, because every time I go to do something, someone's saying, well, go this way, go this way, go this way, and I just want to go ahead with the project. I'll go on to that a little later. But I think I'm the only person from a country where cannabis is legal right across the country. And legalization, I say beware of it, because it doesn't mean free access and the cannabis will always be available. What happened in Canada about 2 years before the government made it officially legal, the big corporations started to move in, buy up everything. This is my opinion, but the big, what we call licensed producers in Canada, the people that are allowed to supply cannabis through government regulation, they really don't care about cannabis medicine. They only care about money. There are CEOs of these companies in Canada that have never smoked a joint in their life, but they think they invented the plant. And this is just not my way of treating cannabis medicine. I much prefer the indigenous Mohawk way, who've been using it for thousands of years, and they treat it as a natural medicine. And I'm a natural medicine guy. I don't like synthetics. I don't believe that they belong in biological systems. So I am a whole plant medicine guy. This is a philosophy I've had for some time. Drugs should be tested on the people that make them. If you made a vaccine, you test it on yourself and your kids. I've never recommended any herb or drug to a person that I haven't used myself. And I'm an analyst, or an analyst, depends how you look at the word. My only power in this whole business, which I've been in for almost 20 years, has been high pressure liquid HPLC, or high pressure liquid chromatography. This instrument here, or you can high price liquid chromatography if you have to pay for one, because they're about €100,000 new each. This is HPLC, this is GC mass spectroscopy. These two instruments are found in virtually every university lab or pharmacology lab or any full cannabinoid lab in the world. We use this instrument to detect cannabinoids and this to detect terpenes, pesticides, and other contaminants, so we can do full quality control on the cannabis that we're putting out to the public in Canada. And where does CBD and THC come from? This is what I do. I call this the three-way split, because this is an overlay of three different profiles of three different varieties of cannabis. The blue trace is from recreational cannabis. I'm not even sure what they mean by recreational cannabis. In Canada, that's what it's legalized as, recreational. And I think that's just the government's way of collecting the tax and saying, don't really take it seriously as a medicine. You go have fun on it, but it's not a serious medicine. Well, to hell, it's not. But anyway, this is recreational cannabis, the blue trace. And I just want to make a point. This is what I call psycho weed. It's high THC and very low CBD. There's a little blip under there. That's recreational cannabis with mostly THC and a little bit of CBD. And then the hemp strains is in the red with a high CBD profile and a little bit of THC. And I have more than 15,000 cannabinoid profiles in my data banks from hundreds of different strains over the years. And I never find THC in the hemp varieties to go over 1%, but it's locked down in Europe to be 0.2% THC. And it won't go over 1% in the plant anyway. It'll always maintain this sort of ratio. And with that amount of CBD buffering the effect of THC, it's very unlikely you'll experience a real THC high if you take cannabidiol from the hemp plant. And if you cross a high THC strain with a hemp strain, you'll come out 1 in 4 with what I call a 50-50, roughly equal THC and CBD. This is the green trace here, and the CBD roughly equals the THC. It doesn't look like, the bigger the peak, the more the compound, but it looks like there's less THC, but it's actually less absorbance of UV light, but quantitatively they come out roughly the same, THC and CBD. And only one more chromatogram, because this is what I do, and I love chromatography. But this is what I call the work of art. It was done by Dr. Brunemann in Switzerland, and it was actually done, I believe, in the early 1980s. And in this one single GCMS run, you see the terpenes, and the cannabinoids in a single run, and these are minor terpenes and these are minor cannabinoids. In the lab, we attenuate these peaks up and we can see all 140 cannabinoids and 150 odd terpenoids, even more than that. But we can use this instrument to identify and quantify all of the 90% of the medicine in the cannabis plant using these instruments. And this is a list of cannabis efficacy, meaning the desired effect. It's effective in all of these illnesses, and that's unprecedented. There's no other medicine that can do that. And I have often thought that cannabis is a very unique medicine, and it shouldn't be classified with really herbal medicine where it kind of belongs, but not with pharmaceutical medicine, because pharmaceutical medicine uses a whole different premise with synthesizing and putting them into biological systems. And cannabis can do all of these things from a natural product source. I've seen miracles with $5 worth of cannabis. Now, I'm going to take you through a brief analogy of the endocannabinoid system. It's not my idea, it was given to me by a fellow in California. This is actually a YouTube video, and he sent me slides from his video, very kindly gave them to me, and I just want to acknowledge him. And the analogy that I use for the endocannabinoid system is a mobile that you hang above a child's bed, where all the pieces will hang down in equilibrium and in a balanced state. And in ancient Chinese philosophy, they realized that nature had dualities and dynamic balance. They called it the yin and the yang, negative and positive, hot or cold, light and dark. And they also took that into human physiology and saw yin and yang, or polar opposites in the central nervous system, and that could be looked at as GABA inhibition and glutamate excitation. My mouse is working good. Okay. And the same for the immune system, inflammation and anti-inflammation. Same for the endocrine system. They're all balanced. And I don't think that the endocannabinoid system is a good name for it, because it confuses it with the systems that it regulates. It's really the regulator of regulators, and it regulates all these systems. The oxidation system, cardiovascular, with once again a push-pull like effect. And what you have with these neurotransmitters, hormones, and cytokines in the immune system, hormones in the endocrine system, and neurotransmitters in the nervous system, they all balance out. For example, if you get something goes haywire with one of the neurotransmitters, that will upset the balance. But the endocannabinoids are there to try to reset the balance. It's like holding the mobile from the top, and it'll reset the homeostatic balance. And if you hang say you get brain inflammation, you put a corticosteroid or an opiate on that system to attempt to fix the symptom. And if you hang an opiate on for the pain or a laxative for the constipation involved from the opiate, you'll put a stress on that system. And eventually it'll snap and you'll end up in the ECU or dead. And all of these signaling molecules are proteins. They're neurotransmitters, hormones, or cytokines, and they're all coded from DNA. And the CBD modulates transcription. I'm talking CBD now because it's more immune system related. But there are 1,100 genes that make signaling molecules in the immune system, and these will upregulate or downregulate inflammation in the immune system. So it's all a balancing act, and the endocannabinoids are there to officiate the balance. And pharmaceutical drugs work at the level of symptoms, not systems. This is what's different about cannabis. It'll work at the level of the system. That's why its efficacy range is so broad, because it's attempting to balance out the system, whether it's endocrine, hormonal, or nervous. It's always trying to balance out the system. Oh, that's a pretty picture. I'll go back. For example, in the immune system, there's more than 350 different protein signaling molecules. And the job of the endocannabinoids is to cascade through that system, shifting the balance. And if you live in urban Europe, you're inflamed because you're exposed to environmental toxins, chronic biological infection, inflammatory diet. And to balance out your system, I recommend cannabis. And like I say, I'm a natural product guy. And my ideal form of cannabis to consume would be a hemp calyx. I walked into a field of hemp grown by a partner in Saskatchewan in Canada, and he hadn't harvested one section of the field, and it was 30 below outside. It was all frozen. And the cannabis looked like a popsicle stick. It was just a thin stem and a huge calyx, which was bud and full of seed. And I said, let's just take that, cut it off the top, take it back to your house and put it in the blender, add some ice cream to make it taste good. But if you blend that up, you'll get the most nutritious medicinal drink you could ever put in your body. That is cannabis medicine to myself. And I fear the young kids in Canada are always trying, in a recreational market, they're trying to get as concentrated as THC as they can, and they purify it. and isolate it. And I'm telling them that the more you purify or isolate a molecule, the more it will behave like a synthetic. And now I want to shift gears and talk about putting cannabis to work. We have an opiate epidemic in Canada. Every 19 minutes, somebody will die from a prescription drug. And it's not heroin anymore that's killing people, it's things like Oxycontin and fentanyl. And I've always thought that drugs should heal and not kill, but these are major killers. And the people I'm working with now, the Mohawk in Canada, are being prescribed generic opiates at 3 times the rate to the non-Indigenous people. And they're dying at 3 times the rate. And in my earlier studies, in my doctorate degree, I was told that always work with high-risk populations. Your data will make more sense. And that's why I'm trying to initiate the study for opiate reduction using cannabis in the Mohawk Nation. These are conventional opiate drugs for relieving pain. My mouse quit working. These are the ones that will kill you very quickly. And fentanyl is a major disaster in Canada and the United States, and it's coming to Europe as well. There was a 79% increase in 2013 to 2014 in opiate deaths, and Portugal maintained the lowest, one of the lowest, because they had decriminalized all drugs in Portugal. And they're finding the opiate death rate are quite low. But in North America, it's on a dramatic increase. And this is the difference between CBD and fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin. A 4 milligram dose can be lethal. And CBD has really no psychoactive component, and you can take 1,000 milligrams of it with no harmful effects. And cannabis can bring about pain relief, antidepressant, anti-anxiety, which are all withdrawal symptoms. We did a short study in Vancouver in 2013 where we put up a notice in the dispensary that anybody addicted to methadone come and see a person behind the counter. And we had 20 people within a few days. And we called methadone liquid handcuffs because the person had to show up to the methadone clinic every day to pick up their methadone dose. So if it's easy for them to come to the dispensary to pick up their standardized oral cannabis dose, and also fill out a daily questionnaire with the employee of the dispensary. We ran the study for 3 months and saw everyone in the study decrease their methadone consumption. We were tracking their prescription records and doing urine samples. And all of them showed a significant reduction in opiate use. The first 50% was the easy part, the last 50% was the hard part. But we were able to get 2 of them off completely, and all of them showed significant reduction. But it was only a small study and an observational and feasibility study. But we did find some interesting results that we were using about 200 milligrams a day of THC, activated THC in a standardized oral capsule. That seemed to get most of them through withdrawal. And interestingly, the ones that interacted most with the dispensary employee in a social and supportive way had the most success. So it's human interaction with cannabis as a harm reduction agent can win against the opiate problem. And synthetic cannabinoids can be very dangerous. There's a product in England called Spice that people are getting psychotic events and people are dying from them. And synthetic cannabinoids, I don't believe, belong in biological systems, like I've said. They will cause side effects and problems, and I fear that this is what the pharmaceutical industry will do with cannabis, is they'll synthesize all of the cannabinoids at a cheaper cost, and they'll try to probably recombine them in an entourage type fashion, but synthetics will invariably cause side effects and problems. I'm going to skip through a bit of this because I think I'm running out of time. This is work from Dr. Lumir Hanush, where he showed that purified CBD had a bell curve, like dose-response curve. This is a bell curve, like this. And what this means is you'll get very little effect here, you'll get optimal effect here, and very little effect here at higher dosages. So you have to hit the dosage right on to get the optimal effect from, say, cannabidiol. And if they use an extract of cannabis, they'll see a plateau-like response, meaning you can dose virtually anywhere in the dose-response curve. And you'll probably ask yourself, if cannabis is doing this balancing act, if I eat an unstandardized brownie, do I get this horrible reaction, paranoia and fear? That's an overdose of THC, because it crosses over to the serotonin receptor and can indeed bring about paranoia, but that's an overdose of THC. And in dosing of THC, which is often done in cancer treatment, Boja has been using suppository method for a number of years here, and it seems to be very effective. And I often recommend a high THC suppository and oral cannabidiol if people get too high. And always start small and work up in dosage. And I'm running out of time. This is a young lady I've been working with for more than 10 years. She had severe epileptic seizures, and she was brought to me by her mother, who had taken her to Mark Emery's Vapor Lounge in Vancouver. But she was 14, and Mark didn't want her vaping in her lounge at such a young age. So he sent her to myself because he knew I was into standardized oral cannabis. And young Haley came with her mother, and she didn't look well. And she was having 10 to 16 grand mal seizures every day. And I knew there was no high CBD strains being served in the dispensary I was at. It was all high THC. But 2 days after I met Haley, a young hippie kid came from a nearby island and brought in this bag of weed that he wanted to sell to the club. And my job was to analyze it and to see how much THC was in the cannabis. So I ran it while the kids sat in my office, or in the lab, and the first peak to come out is CBD, and it started going up and up and up, and I went, whoa, this is great. And he didn't even know why, and he started to cry. And I had no idea why he was crying, but I asked him a couple of years later, and he said, I was just having a bad day, and I was glad I could sell some pot to the club. He had no idea that this could be very useful medicine for Haley. So anyway, I prepped it up into a capsule form, gave it to Mom. She gave it to Haley, and she stopped seizing overnight. It just went flat. And the neurologist couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Mom couldn't believe it. We took her to Children's Hospital. They ran EEGs on her and a number of tests. And indeed, a significant reduction in her pre-seizure activity. And this went on for almost 3 weeks. And then she had a little cluster of seizures around her period. And Haley wasn't expected to live past 15 years old. I had the honor of escorting her to her high school graduation. She's now 24, a couple of years ago. She completed in a special course, but she was able to complete high school. And she's a beautiful young girl, and essentially her seizure frequency and the type of seizure she was experiencing have completely changed. She still have a cluster around her period. We can't get rid of them all, but a significant reduction. And this is getting into dosage. I think I'm out of time, so I'll just move ahead. And what I am really have been about since day one is just quality controlling the herbal medicine of cannabis, standardizing it to a specific dosage, testing it for heavy metals, pesticides, mycotoxins, things like that. And I'll just skip on. One word on juicing. This is a juicer here. You put the cannabis in the top, the juice comes out here, and the pulp comes out the back. We've tested the juice. There's virtually no cannabinoids in the juice. They don't like water. They'll come out in the pulp. So if you're juicing cannabis, not to say that juice is not valuable, it's chock full of minerals and vitamins, but if you're after cannabinoids, you make a porridge out of the pulp and heat it up to activate it. And I got this from a young Slovenian lady. It's from a quotation from Margaret Mead, and it goes back to what Bojidar and the team are doing. Never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. We must keep fighting. Cannabis, I can't emphasize in the past 25 years the number of people that I've seen who have been helped by cannabis, given a better quality of life from taking the natural medicine. I believe this is really what cannabis is for, is to bring about better quality of life, better health. If you eat it, and I don't condone highly purified or synthetic anything. Eat it as a natural plant, and I'd say you're much better off. So I think I'll finish there. You've been a great audience. Thanks for not going to sleep, and hope to see you again.